Good morning, Professor.
I doing all right?
Yeah.
All right. How about you?
Okay. Things is all right on this end, you know. Day by day, I didn't, I didn't do anything crazy yesterday, so, that's why I waited. So, going today at a more regular time. So talk to me, like, is there anything from our conversation yesterday that kind of like stuck and resonated with any of y'all?
Did you see everybody go stealing the other day?
I mean, I guess apart from that, I think that on Fifth Ave, like everybody just started looting. They started looting. They started saying, if you're gonna loot, that's the place that makes most sense to loot from. You know what I'm saying? Like higher end corporations and businesses. People that historically have disenfranchised communities of color because we can't even afford half this stuff half the time. But what are some other events that stood out to y'all?
Yesterday, I saw a video where the chief of the police, chief of the LAPD, said that it's on the looters' hands as well, and those who burning down stuff. But that don't even make sense because we didn't even know who George Floyd was until that video came about. So how is it that the blood is on their hands as well?
Yeah, that's a fact. It's a very well. The thing is, they're assuming responsibility. You know what I'm saying? Because it's not a isolated instance or situation, right? Like, a lot of folk would like to believe that this only happens here and there, or there's a few bad apples in the bunch, like all these different quotes. But the reality shows that even the cops that don't kill people, like they still arrest and harass people of color at a higher rate than they would the white community. And you're talking about by percentage, because at the end of the day, there's still more white people in the United States than people of color, like than Black and Hispanic people combined, or like minorities in general. But if you're looking at by percentage, minorities, for the amount of people that there are in the Black and brown community, like they get sent to jail, to prison at a much higher rate. And it's injustice in a lot of cases because you see how two people from two different backgrounds can commit the same exact crime, but only one of them, ends up doing life, or one of them ends up, getting the death penalty or whatever the case is, So it's a lot of stuff that unfortunately plays into all of this. And, everybody in these positions, they're aware of it. Hello, y'all see me? Yeah, y'all can see me? Y'all can hear me? Hello? Y'all can hear me? My bad. Can y'all hear me? Y'all can hear me? And nobody will understand what was happening on his side and et cetera, you know what I'm saying? So he really tried to stick it out for the sake of making it known to the world, known to the public. Look, these are the conditions inside of here. This is what Black and brown people go through. And unfortunately, it took a toll. It took a mean toll on him. And by the time that he took his life, he was only 21 or 22. You know, he came out of Rikers Island, and he accomplished more than any person that I've ever worked with coming out of the correctional system. You know, he went and he got his GED, which is a very difficult thing to do. It's, you know what I'm saying, especially after going through. It's already difficult to just take a test that summarizes your whole secondary educational experience, and then you get a degree, a diploma for it. You know, it's already difficult by itself to do that, but he did that after already doing a jail bid. And then after that, he got enrolled into Bronx Community College, and he actually had a pretty high GPA. He was over a 3.0 by I think he was over 3.5. You know what I'm saying? And basically, you know, he wasn't able to continue because he was just so messed up mentally. Because, like I said, once he came home, all that my apologies. Like I was saying, once he came home, all that media attention, because he already got his GED, he already was at Bronx Community College with over a 3.5 GPA, but all that media attention caused the hood to kind of like reject him. You know what I'm saying? Like, they thought that he was going to become rich and famous or something of that nature, and that's why the hood started harassing him and violating him for no apparent reason. Let me let this pass over. But you know, Kalief, once he came back, like someone had attempted to even stab and slash him. And you know, like if you watch the documentary on Netflix, it shows an image of him just kind of like bleeding out the side of his face. You know what I'm saying, from the attempt. And it's like even once he made it through all that, he still had to worry about looking over his shoulder, looking over to make sure he wasn't gonna get killed or robbed or whatever. You know, once he came back to the community. So it's a very difficult and traumatic situation overall. What I'm gonna do is share the screen real quick. So as we see Netflix, basically Jay-Z and what's his name, Harvey Weinstein, like they got involved in producing this docuseries where basically it's detailing and documenting Kalief's life. Jay-Z didn't specifically provide him any funds that I know of, but he basically was linking up with his mother, Venita Browder, and kind of just getting the message across. Unfortunately, you know, Venita, she had went through so much that she ended up dying from heart failure. You know, she ended up dying from heart failure because she already had functionality of maybe like about 30% of her heart, I think less than that. And that's only if she was on medication. And so, you know, her functionality dropped down to that point because she had caught a stroke. And when you catch a stroke, sometimes, you know what I'm saying, you'd be lucky if it doesn't do permanent damage. You know what I'm saying? She caught a stroke and it pretty much like killed the majority of her heart. So she only had a small percentage of her heart still functioning, and it was functioning only a little over 20%, only with pills and medication and stuff like that. So if she didn't take that, you know, she would end up unfortunately dying. And unfortunately, she ended up dying, I think, 2 years ago, after they was doing conferences talking about Kalief Browder, talking about his situation. And I guess it was just too much for her to handle, you know, like there was a reporter that actually said it, like she literally died from a broken heart, which it's valid because her heart literally was broken, you know, her heart literally was not even functioning. And this situation, you could only imagine how much more of her heart it took, you know what I'm saying? Like the stress and the pain and the, you know what I'm saying? And she already had her husband, who she wasn't even with anymore. Like he was already not even present in Kalief's case, and he was trying to basically be part of the settlement. You know what I'm saying? Where he was going to get a portion of like the settlement that whatever they got with the city or whatever. You know what I'm saying? It was only, I think last year. Yeah, it was just last year that the Browder family, they were awarded over $3 million. You know what I'm saying? Which obviously at this point they lost Kalief Browder, and they lost Venita Browder, the mother as well. And there were like several other siblings, you know what I'm saying? Because she was a foster mother, she was a foster parent, so she had different foster kids, and some of the foster kids were actually directly related to Kalief, because if you have a foster kid and that kid has other siblings and you decided you wanted to, adopt those siblings too, they usually give them to the parent that already has the blood related siblings already. So the family, they basically they ended up just all being broken, and the Browder family specifically, like Kalief and his other siblings that he was related to, like they came from a mother who, she used to abuse crack cocaine, unfortunately. So Kalief, he was actually what people would call a quote unquote crack baby. You know what I'm saying? So even that in itself was another obstacle he had to confront. It was something else that he had to, overcome, because usually if you come out, if you're given birth by a mother who's addicted to drugs, odds are you're gonna have some kind of symptoms of whatever that can lead you towards a similar path. And for the most part, Kalief was successful in not even doing that. That we know of. He went, got his GED, got enrolled in Bronx Community College, like I said, and he did more than a lot of people that I've worked with who were on parole and probation. You know what I'm saying? Like the majority of people, and it's sad that I have to say like this, but over 90% of the people that I've worked with on parole and probation, like they don't go back to school. Like if they do anything once they come back into the community, is they try to find a job. You know what I'm saying? They try to maybe get a OSHA certification, something of that nature, which is cool. You don't have to go to a 4-year school, because maybe you could just get a trade and call it a day. But, a lot of people, the majority, just don't even do that, period. Because you get caught up in, I gotta be this real one, you know what I'm saying? I gotta go back to the streets. I gotta do X, Y, and Z. And it's like, it just ends up putting you through this revolving door of incarceration and all that. Let me share the screen again. Because of Kalief Browder's situation, when Obama was still president, he actually banned solitary confinement on a federal level for juveniles. All right. Kalief's situation was in 2013, I believe it was. Let's see. Obama said that the reforms would affect roughly 10,000 inmates in the federal system. Around 100,000 people are in solitary confinement in the U.S., according to the White House. The Washington Post noted, however, that between September 2014 and 2015, solitary confinement. So at the very least, the number was low, but you have to think about it like this. If you're a juvenile, you are not even fully developed yet. All right. And Kalief Browder's situation was in 2013. If you're a juvenile, you're not even a fully functional human being yet. You know what I'm saying? Like you're still trying to figure out life. You're still trying to figure out who you are. And for you to then be put into solitary confinement at the age of 16, 17, 18, whatever age you are, you know what I'm saying? Even if you're in your early 20s, it's like, especially for men don't finish developing their prefrontal cortex until they're 25, sometimes even 30 years old. You know what I'm saying? Like that's the part of your brain that helps you with your decision making. If you're already altering somebody's, mental chemistry, you're going to create an imbalance, and you're going to keep people from being able to make better decisions and make better choices, because it's already proven that once you keep somebody in solitary confinement for over a week, like that's already considered torture by war concepts and terminologies. You know, the United Nations came out and said if somebody's in solitary confinement for a week or more, that's the equivalent of being tortured in a third world country. So you could waterboard somebody. You guys know what waterboarding is?
Yes.
Yeah.
So waterboarding, for those that don't know, is like basically you have somebody leaning against a chair or like, you know, laying down on the table or something like that. They put a towel over your face. Basically, they just pour water over your face and make you feel like you're drowning. You know what I'm saying? And they do that in order to get information out of you, in order to torture you. You know what I'm saying? You feel like you're gonna die, but you're not gonna die because you're not swallowing enough water to die, but you're basically drowning. You know what I'm saying? Like they're saying that solitaire after a week is equivalent to that, basically, because that's torture. You know what I'm saying? Solitary is torture, waterboarding is torture, torture is torture, and as Melvin said earlier, you know, it's cruel and unusual punishment. It doesn't even make sense considering what the crime is. It doesn't make sense, you know, considering just the whole situation. And so, in Kalief's case, and in a lot of juveniles' case, you have to already deal with, you know, just trying to grow up, just trying to figure out, yo, who am I? Like, what is my purpose in this world? Like, why am I even alive? Like, all these questions, you know what I'm saying? Questions that we've all asked at some point or another and are probably still asking, you know what I'm saying? And so he probably was asking questions like, why me? Why am I going through this? Why is nobody hearing me? Why is, you know, why is the system abusing me like this? I didn't even do it, or, you know what I'm saying, whatever the case is. So like you have somebody whose mental chemistry, like I said, it's not even all the way there. It's not even all the way balanced. And now you're just creating further disruption in that. So that's why solitary confinement was banned by Obama as well, because it's like you messing around with somebody's chemistry, like the mental chemistry, like, yeah, they have a higher likelihood of maybe even wanting to commit suicide, you know, which unfortunately is what happened. And a lot, suicide happens, you know, pretty frequently in jail, you know what I'm saying, in jail and in prison. They call it hanging up, you know what I'm saying? Like usually if there's not like a light inside of your cell where it's like on the ceiling and you could, you know, like if there is a light, you could basically throw a towel or your bed sheets through, you know, through the, like over it on the ceiling, and then you hang up like that. If they don't have that, what people usually do is, you know, they tie the bed sheet around like the bed frame of the bed, like on the high part of it, and you know what I'm saying, they literally lay on the ground and they try hanging up like that. It's a lot harder, but people try like that as well. And if you watch like documentaries on like Rikers Island and stuff like that, like in my corrections class, I showed a documentary where a young man, he learned that he was getting 25 to life for killing somebody who was allegedly involved in the murder of his sister. And once he learned this, like he put a towel over the window that allows the correctional officers to look into his cell. A lot of correctional officers, you know, they tell you to take it off because you could be hanging up. You know what I'm saying? You could be attempting to hang up and they wouldn't be able to see you. You know what I'm saying? So there's a lot of stuff that happens behind the wall. Kalief unfortunately was exposed to a lot of this stuff, but that's why Obama did away with solitary, at least on the federal level, because, you know what I'm saying, it's just it's crazy the type of ways that solitary is used in general. And we'll talk about it
I
for
have
the
a
next.
question.
Yeah, go for it.
You said that they put the towel over the window at the door, right? But don't they have cameras in the room to see as well?
Not
So even if they do that, they could still know.
No.
not in the cells. I mean, if you're in like,
Because
in a PC unit, you know, then perhaps they do have access. It depends on the facility and stuff like that. But a lot of the cells, like if you're not in solitary confinement, you're most likely not going to have a camera in it. You know, if you're in solitary confinement, they may have a camera in those cells. But it also depends on the facilities because not every facility is even up to date with equipment and stuff like that. Make sense?
It does and it doesn't because you would think that solitary confinement, that is where they would need the cameras, you know,
Yeah.
to see what they're doing inside there.
I mean, that I know of, there is solitary confinement that has cameras in them, but if you're talking about somebody's regular housing unit, like the regular cell, because that's what I personally can speak to more from experience. They don't have cameras inside of those. In solitaire, you know, I'm sure that they have cameras in different specific cells or in specific units. But it also depends on the jails and stuff like that, like how updated the jail is in regards to technology and video installation. You know, because not every jail has cameras where you should have them. You know, which is why situations like the Sandra Bland situation occur. You know, where she just, you know, she got arrested for a traffic violation or whatever, for a ticket violation, and next thing you know, she's in jail and she allegedly hung herself. You know what I'm saying? Allegedly, because they try to say that she committed suicide, but it's like there's no video footage. There's no witnesses that can really affirm that, and there's people that actually say the opposite. You know what I'm saying? So it's like this happens all the time in jail and in prisons, where it's like you could cover up somebody's suicide or somebody's assault just because you know where the cameras are and where they aren't. You know what I'm saying? That's what happened with the Jeffrey Epstein situation, because he was supposedly on suicide watch. He was on suicide watch, and somehow this billionaire managed to commit suicide being on suicide watch. You know what I'm saying? Like, that kind of stuff is very difficult to believe that you know, that correctional officers wouldn't know what happened. Hey, y'all can hear me? What was the last thing that you heard me say? What was the last thing you heard me say?
He was talking about
Yeah, I was
saying
talking.
That he
About suicide watch.
Yeah.
for
So, like,
Jeffrey Epstein.
yeah, so Jeffrey Epstein, he was on suicide watch, and so you mean to tell me that this guy committed suicide being on suicide watch? You know what I'm saying? Like they know what they're doing. You know what I'm saying? Behind the jails, and obviously there's a whole bunch of theories out there. Oh, the Clintons put a hit on him, and whatever the case is, whatever you believe or whatever, the point is, a correctional officer had to look the other way for that to even happen. You know what I'm saying? And so some of these facilities, you know, they still don't have enough surveillance cameras. Rikers Island, they've added more throughout the years, but you know, there's still a lot of what you would call blind spots. You know what I'm saying? Where it's like, literally, if you take somebody to a certain area, like, you know how to rough them up or how to do something to them. For my corrections course, I was actually going to have them come through this past semester, but obviously because of COVID, I couldn't. But I had him come the previous semester, and you know, he talked about. I had a correctional officer come through, and he talked about how, like, when he was a CO, like, he did engage in foul play. He did engage in, you know, effed up activities, and you know, like, if he wanted to like provoke somebody, he knew how to make it look on camera where like he flung somebody around in a way that made it seem like he was being attacked, so that way on camera it looked like somebody was trying to attack him. And then once he did it, you know what I'm saying, assault the individual or fight the individual back, it looked like he had justification or reason for it, but he was actually the one that initiated something. Like for example, he's walking somebody, and then what's it called? He got the person's hands behind the back, and like he'll pinch their butt cheek. You know what I'm saying? And obviously you're gonna get a reaction from that. Like the person's gonna turn around like, hey, and then on camera it's gonna look like the dude turned around and he was trying to swing on you or something like that. And at that moment you basically you start beating him up. You know what I'm saying? But it's not even that the dude was gonna fight you. It's that, you know, you grabbed his butt. so it's like that kind of stuff happens in jail. And those are like tactics that, you know, if a correctional officer wants to violate you or they just don't like you or whatever, and they're looking for a reason to fight you, that's like one example of how, you know what I'm saying, how they could get you. And obviously Kalief, you know, like if you've seen videos of him, like he actually got beat up shortly after he attempted to commit suicide in jail. You know what I'm saying? And the officers supposedly beat him up, from what he was saying, because, you know, sometimes the officers, they say, oh, you just asking for attention. It's not really that you're going to commit suicide, but you're asking for attention. You know what I'm saying? But obviously in his case, he was unsuccessful the times that he attempted in jail, but obviously he was successful committing suicide later on, unfortunately. I'm gonna share the screen again. And the thing about solitaire, you know, in Kalief's case, is that when you're in solitaire, oftentimes you're in there for 23 hours out of 24 hours in a day. Like, I don't know how y'all have felt during this Corona time, but a lot of people have been talking about that they feel like they're in jail. You know what I'm saying? And I understand, because it's like, this is not freedom for you. So right here, this is our article showing that Kalief Browder's family got over $3 million from New York City. All right. When he was 16, he was picked up for allegedly stealing a backpack and jailed at Rikers Island for 3 years, which is just horrible. It's crazy. So you're talking about this settlement. Kalief took his life in 2015. He was picked up in 2010. All right. So basically 10 years ago is when all of this started. He was 16 in 2010. His case was dropped and released, and Kalief took his life. Like, he basically came out in 2013, I believe, and then he took his own life in 2015. So he only spent about 2 years in the community before he took his own life. Obviously, now the city's talking about closing Rikers. That should be done supposedly by 2027. 2027. Yeah, that was like a tongue twister right there for me. But basically, this article came out January of last year, that the family finally received these settlements. So Kalief took his life. Let's go over the timeline again. He was picked up in 2010, right? He was 16 and picked up in 2010, spent 3 years in Rikers Island for no reason. Then he ended up being released in 2013, and he took his life in 2015. It took almost 4 years, if not 4 years exactly, for the family to finally receive the settlement, only after Kalief took his life, and only after the mother ended up dying as well. So right there, that shows you the tragedy of the criminal justice system, where it's like they feel that comfortable delaying justice to people that were wrongfully convicted and that were wrongfully wronged at that. You know what I'm saying? And this is just another example. Like when we see the whole George Floyd situation, you know what I'm saying? Like, why would they not arrest the same day? Or at least the main officer. Like, if you're going to arrest any officer, obviously it got to be the officer that put his knee on Floyd's neck. But if he was fired on that first day, on that same day, or at least within 24 hours, why was he not arrested within 24 hours? You know what I'm saying? And it just shows that the system, especially when it comes to people of color, they like to delay justice. You know what I'm saying? Right now, the government, police officers, National Guard, all these paramilitary forces, they're arresting protesters. They're fighting protesters, shooting them with rubber bullets, throwing tear gas at protests, which the majority are still peaceful, regardless of like the groups that are out here doing stuff or whatever. They're arresting protesters instead of having had arrested the people that committed this injustice. You know what I'm saying? So like they would rather arrest those, you know, who are trying to fight against this and the actual citizens under which we have the constitutional right to protest, freedom of speech. They'd rather arrest those individuals than the people that they got caught on camera for the whole world to see murder a man in broad day. You know what I'm saying? And it took 4 days for them to actually at least get one of the officers, and they almost didn't even get him. The district attorney was talking about, you know, he doesn't see enough reasoning and this and that. And I don't know if you saw yesterday, they came out with the autopsy results, and they had to use a independent investigator to look at George Floyd's case, because the original examiner was talking about Floyd had some pre-existing breathing conditions. You know what I'm saying? When it was clear as day, like we literally, if you was able to see the video, or if you saw the video, you saw George Floyd losing life as every second passed by. You know what I'm saying? And you knew it was because of that knee that was in his neck. And like I said, the medical examiners that the police try to get or whatever, or the government tried to say that it was because he had some kind of breathing condition prior to all of this. But the independent medical examiner had confirmed just yesterday that it was because the circulation got cut off from the neck, and the knees that were put in his back by the other two officers also interfered with his breathing. Altogether, all of that interfered with his breathing. So that's the information that the attorney general can now take when trying to prosecute against the officers. But the fact that even though it was caught on live camera, like even though it was caught on camera for everybody to see, they still try to put a spin on it, and they try to say, nah, he has some kind of pre-existing breathing condition that, you know, that caused his death.
But that doesn't even make sense, because even if he did have a pre-existing breathing condition, the knee on his neck would have triggered it. So that's what they're trying to say.
Exactly. It automatically validates that whatever was being done was probably even worse, if anything, because it's like he already had a pre-existing condition and he was making it known he can't breathe. You know what I'm saying? And he still applied the pressure. And at the end of the day, what's it called? At the end of the day, what they're trying to establish is that it's not first-degree murder, because they're probably trying to hit him with like a manslaughter charge, or it was unintentional homicide, right? Because that's what manslaughter is. Like the difference between murder and manslaughter is the intent. If you killed somebody accidentally, like let's say, you know what I'm saying, like you was driving while intoxicated, or not even, let's say you was driving and like somebody ran right in front of your car, you know what I'm saying, and you hit them by accident, but like they still want to get you with a charge for whatever reason, you'll probably get hit with manslaughter. Or like I had a case when I dealt with somebody on parole that somebody had pulled out a knife on him and tried to stab him or whatever, and they obviously got into a fight. The guy that was being attempted to get stabbed managed to reverse the situation, and he grabbed the same knife and killed the dude. But he stabbed him one time, I believe it was, but it went straight to his heart. You know what I'm saying? If it was intentional, he would have stabbed him multiple times. But he stabbed him one time, and you know what I'm saying? Instead of getting hit with a murder case, he ended up getting manslaughter because the intent wasn't obvious. You know, it wasn't obvious. Oh, I was trying to kill him, or I don't even know if it was to the heart. But basically, he stabbed him one time, and the dude ended up dying. So
wouldn't that have been self-defense though?
There's no self-defense laws, right?
It would be self-defense if it was like down south, but this was in
New York City.
Yeah, at the time when I was working with people on parole and probation, before I got into Rikers, I was working in Paterson, New Jersey. So, you know, in Jersey, there's no self-defense. So, basically, they're trying to establish the precedents that, you know, he didn't do it intentionally, so that way, you know, he does less time, and maybe in the future he could go back into law enforcement, because that's the issue with a lot of law enforcement agencies. Like, you could fire somebody, but it don't really mean that much, because number one, they still collect, they still get their administrative leave. You could still, you know, potentially collect a certain amount of your pension, and then on top of that, the unions are so powerful because you have all these agreements and all these contractual obligations that the person might end up being, you know, reinstated back into the department, or they might be validated at another department. You know what I'm saying? So that's the power of a good union, I guess. You know, like they have, law enforcement has one of the strongest unions, just period, in general. So that all plays a factor, and obviously, even though the evidence is clear as day, they don't give a fuck. Like they're gonna protect their own, and that's just kind of what the code is. So, you know, we gonna keep it at that for the Kalief Browder case or whatnot, because, you know, we got a couple more minutes. I want to open it up to like some conversations, discussions. I'm not even sure, is our discussion leader present in this right now, or
Is what?
the discussion leader? I gotta check who the person is. But what are some thoughts and conversations that, you know what I'm saying, y'all want to have or kind of go about in regards to the Kalief Browder situation?
Do you think that if they had like a proper out of like things put in place for him when he came out of prison, so like
Right.
for his mental health and all of that stuff, do you think if they had that, then he wouldn't have committed suicide?
I definitely think he would have been way better off. He could have potentially received those services, and what's it called? Like he would at least have somebody to speak to and to kind of mitigate everything that he was experiencing, because at the end of the day, he was bottling all of that in. You know what I'm saying? He kept so much pain inside that it's like nobody could understand him. He was if you watch the documentary on Netflix, he was actually punching holes in the like he was just like messed up, like emotionally. And the thing too is, men in general, especially men of color, right? Because men in general already have a hard time dealing with emotions because, oh, we're supposed to, you know, be strong and this and that. But men of color specifically, because there's the stereotypes of machismo and you got to be tough and, you know what I'm saying, like all this stuff, like that just adds another layer of pain, because it's like you can't even talk to somebody, because if you talk to anybody, you're considered to be weak, or part of my, you consider to be a bitch. you know, that's how you would be looked at in the community. And it's like all of that played a factor in regards to like Kalief's ability to express himself and to be able to find the freedom that he needed. You know what I'm saying? So I definitely think if he had a mental health services provided, like the city should have at least paid for that. You know what I'm saying? Like if they were still solving the settlement, trying to figure out the settlement and all that stuff, because I understand there's bargaining agreements and all that stuff. But if they knew that they were going to lose this, because it's the evidence was overwhelming, they needed to at least provide him with mental health services, and they didn't even do that. So it's like, you know, he ended up unfortunately getting to the point that he did, and if you watch the documentary, he actually got to a point where he wanted to what's going on, boss? He got to a point where he actually wanted to go on like a retreat. It was like a little mini retreat to like the hills, like somewhere out in Colorado or whatever. And like, unfortunately, you know, he had to wait like 6 or 8 months or something like that for him to get to that retreat. And he just couldn't wait. He couldn't wait. He was in pain right now. So like he really, you know what I'm saying? He really needed that immediately. Encourage you. You scared?
Question about the Kalief Browder case. I said my question about the Kalief Browder case. My whole thing is this: what took them to find out that it wasn't him? Like, was the Mexican guy going to court saying it was him? Like, I don't get, like, what took them so long to figure out that it was not him?
And why was he locked up for 3 years? Why
This is what I'm saying.
3 years
About a bad.
How does that even
Wasn't
happen?
he locked up for so long just because he couldn't afford bail?
But no, you're not supposed to be held. Like, the case should have been over within 3 years, long before it gets to that. So
Yeah.
really, like, what was that about?
His case was more like people didn't, like, you know, it was just kind of like word of mouth. Like nobody was really trying to investigate or do things the right way. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, he did it, I bet. You know what I'm saying? You just fucking throw reason just based on word of mouth. But it's like that's not the right process. That's not how it's supposed to be, you know, because the police they're supposed to like actually go and collect the information, you know what I'm saying? They're supposed to collect like video footage, you know what I'm saying? Like if somebody accuses you of something, like it can't just be based off somebody's word. Like they gotta go to the spot. They gotta see like, okay, was it a dark alley? Was it, now I'm saying, was there cameras, whatever that we could use to like kind of like assist in trying to affirm whether what you're saying is true or not. They did the wrong thing in general by not even doing that. So, you know, they ended up putting an innocent man, you know what I'm saying, into a facility that he never needed to even be in the first place. And so, you know, they kind of just based it on this premise of, yo, like they probably thought, yo, he black, that he did it, you know what I'm saying? And that's unfortunately just how law enforcement is. Like they're never gonna, very rarely are they gonna question a white person doing something, but if you're a person of color, like they're gonna come at you with the hammer.
That makes me think how many people is actually going through a similar experience. Because, I mean, from experiences that I until like it doesn't never take that long to fight a case.
But that's the same thing with the Central Park 5 case. Multiple words.
Right. It's the same exact.
They did all that time.
Yep. Same
that
exact.
was crazy.
And the thing is, like these cases, y'all know about it because it's on Netflix or, you know what I'm saying, like social media, like putting it on Front Street or whatever. But there's so many Kalief Browders, man. There's so many Kalief Browders.
Right.
There's so many George Floyds. There's so many Eric Gardners. Like, there's so many of these folk that, like, the only reason we even know about it is because we got technology now. We can report it ourselves. We don't gotta wait for racist news media outlets to be talking on behalf of us. You know what I'm saying? Like, we can actually report for ourselves. So at the end, it's like that's kind of the climate and the temperature. And what I would say is like what's it called? Like there's so many cases, especially back in the day. Like if you have the chance, look into George Stinney. I'm gonna type his name right here for y'all. But he basically is the youngest. He's the youngest person to ever be put on death row. He was only 14 years old. And this happened about 70 years ago. Young black boy from North or South Carolina. I forgot which one specifically.
It's in South Carolina.
Yeah, probably. And he got accused of murdering 2 young white girls. And 70 years later, you know, they end up finding out that he never did it. But it was kind of obvious because, you know, he's in the racist South. They only took 3 months to execute him. You know, it only took a couple of hours, like 3 hours, I think, to basically figure out his sentencing and stuff like that. Like his whole trial basically took only like 3 hours. He didn't see his parents for those 3 months that he was locked up. Like they just took him and killed him. And it wasn't until 70 years after his death that he finally got exonerated. And his sisters is already like 70, 80 years old. You know what I'm saying? So like we see, like this stuff has been happening for years, and it's just we don't have cameras and stuff like that. Like obviously the Ahmaud Arbery case that happened almost a month ago, like pretty much not even that long before this George Floyd situation. Like he was just taking a jog in the park, like a jog in the community. You know what I'm saying? Like he wasn't even, like he wasn't a threat the same way that they try to paint him or portray him. So at the end of the day, like they did him dirty, you know, but you could imagine how many other Ahmaud Arbery's there have been like throughout history, you know, where they're just walking through a community or running through a community. And then because of the color of their skin, like people actually go and hunt them, you know what I'm saying? Because that's really what it is. You're hunting people. I'm trying to remember this movie with there's this movie with Denzel Washington. This movie is fire. It's called The Great Leaders. If you get the chance, watch that movie. I just put it right here in the chat section, so y'all could look up that movie whenever you get the chance. What are some other things you could pick up from the Kalief situation? Let's get at least like one more.
Kalief Browder.
Yeah.
It's messed up that the criminal justice system never like formally apologized.
Mm-hmm.
No, there's no response to it. It's just like they bail themselves out with money, and they expect that to be enough. And they don't change reform. I mean, the bill that Obama signed, that changed, but I don't even know. It hasn't stopped. It hasn't abolished. Solitary confinement.
Yeah, I mean, it only did.
Speaking on that,
Go ahead, Precious.
what you showed us what the Obama reform or whatever the bill that he passed is set on the federal level. So does that apply to state facilities?
No, that's That's
I
only
like that.
for federal prisons. Because it's not a law, like it's specific to federal prisons specifically. If state prison policies was to get remanded, it would have to come from the governors. And then if like De Blasio, he did some stuff in regards to New York City, like with Rikers, in regards to solitary, but in general, it was only applicable to federal facilities. What ends up happening is that state and city facilities end up following suit. You know what I'm saying? Because it just makes sense. Like the feds, that's like they're the granddaddy of them all. But state and city facilities usually would follow.
Interesting.
But it all depends from one state or from one city to the next. Like Texas, they still got the death penalty. My bad. Y'all can hear me?
Continue.
My bad. But yeah, it all depends from one state next. Because like for example, Texas, they still have the death penalty, but somewhere like New York, New Jersey, like they don't have it no more. You know what I'm saying? So every city, every state operates individually and or independently of anything. You know what I'm saying? Similar to like marijuana, like its legalization, like Cali, they've been doing the whole marijuana thing, or Colorado, or, you know what I'm saying? Like regardless of what the federal mandates is, because federally it's still I forgot what schedule, but it's on the schedule of like drug classifications. So, it's like every state has to decide for itself what they think is important and what they don't think is important. But with that being said, I'm gonna close off the conversation for today. If anything, we'll continue to talk about it a little bit tomorrow, because we'll talk about solitaire and juveniles and stuff like that. And we'll also be getting into the research paper this week as well, just to like kind of prep you up mentally on like what to do, and what I'm saying, how to start thinking about like going about it. So if you got any questions, hit me through IG, hit me through email, and I'm here for you. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Professor. Appreciate you.
For sure. Stay safe in the meantime.
Bye, Professor. See you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a good day, everybody.
Bye, Professor.